Welcome, everyone. This is the Useless Gamer Podcast. We are the Useless Gamers, a group of Let's Players and indie game enthusiasts. My name is Dice, and with me today I have M. What's up, M?
Hello.
All right, that's all M's going to contribute. All right, anyway, Sam, what's up, man?
Hey, not too much. Just here to do the podcast.
He's just here to do the podcast. And our last person, a new member to the group, not new anymore. He held the entire podcast last time with Sam. What's up, Chico?
What's going on, everybody? I don't know if I would say that I held it. I was just kind of in Sam's wake the whole time, just kind of riding his coattails through it. It came out okay.
It was absolutely beautiful, a masterpiece. Mwah! You guys did a great job. And also with us today, this is a special podcast because we have two game developers here. Our topic today is going to be on game development, especially indie game development. So we thought we should bring some guys who actually know what the hell they're talking about. First up, we have Rob. How you doing, man?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're glad to have you here, man. What games have you made so far, man?
The most recognizable title would be a game called The Appalese Wall, which, like the Chronicles of Narnia, is complete nonsense, so I'll spell it. It's Appalese Wall. It's a Flash game, kind of a fantasy-themed strategy. It's a little bit like a tower defense game, but not quite so linear.
All right. Yeah, so you guys should definitely check that out. We'll have some links in the description afterwards. And the other game dev we have, the other guy who knows, unlike the useless gamers, actually knows what the hell he's talking about, a good friend of mine, Callan. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, though I don't know if I really know what I'm talking about.
Hey, it's you actually made games, so we've just sucked at games. You've done better than us. What games are you working on right now, man?
Well, right now we have a Kickstarter for our game, Super Dwarf Madness, that we want to make, and we've only got about 2 days left on that, so hopefully we can make it in the end.
Yeah, we're going to be trying to push that Kickstarter really hard. We want you guys to do well, and you got a great damn game coming out too. You guys really should check that out. All right, so this is the group we have going on today. We got 4 know-nothings and 2 know-it-alls. So today's topic is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. This is a special day. Sam actually found this really interesting article by Jeff Vogel. It's the guy who's in charge of Spiderweb Games. He's made a couple of indie games. And he wrote this article entitled Marketing, Dumb Luck, and the Popping of the Indie Bubble. The Popping of the Indie Bubble. And essentially what I got from it is that are indie games a fad? So that's our main question today. Are indie games a fad? Like, did they come along, get really popular, and now are they just going to die off like the point and click adventure? And so this article, as I interpreted it, I guess, came in 3 parts, and we're going to start checking out those 3 parts by starting with the first one. A really hard point that he made was essentially indie game success is generally luck. It really has absolutely nothing to do with marketing. He was linking to another article by Alexander Bruce, the guy who made Antichamber, and he was saying indies need to market themselves better, and saying essentially this is dumb. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about this. I'll go ahead and I'll start with the guys who actually know what's going on. Rob, what do you think about this? Do you think marketing actually helps indie games? Like, is that why indie games do well or fail?
Well, that's an interesting question, and my area of expertise is really quite limited to Flash games and the Flash game market, and I think that's a very, very sort of unique animal in the wider ecosystem of gaming markets. Because it depends entirely on almost entirely on viral distribution. So there's almost no direct marketing to customers. I mean, to users, to players. Really, I mean, it's not that marketing can or should be ignored, but it's marketing when it when it comes to Flash games, is all about marketing to sponsors and to Flash game portals.
Hmm. Okay. Well, keep going.
Sorry. Okay. Well, but and not to dodge the question, but to answer it, the answer is that of course marketing is important. You have to market, and you have to market, effectively. And I say that from the experience of having done that very badly and suffered the consequences. And that right there is the proof of why you need to do it well, because it can make all the difference. It can be the difference between success and failure.
Flash games are they get most of their money from ad content, so I would see that absolutely being a huge part. But I don't know, Callan, what do you think? You make games for mostly Xbox Live, man. What is your opinion on this?
Well, in that market, I'd say the users are pretty interesting in the kinds of games they go for, but in general, I mean, if you have something that stands out, that's really going to help you get seen by a lot of people, and if people try it and like it, they're going to share it. So marketing is more of like, I guess, an extension of the game itself. Certain games lend themselves to being marketed in certain ways.
See, I think it's really interesting what you guys are saying, because as a consumer, a lot of what I play, especially if you talk about things like Flash games, which I don't go to portals. I used to go to Newgrounds years ago, but like what I've found is that I will run across somebody who said, "Hey, check out this video I made of this cool game I found." And I'll look at it and I'll be like, "That looks pretty cool. I want to try that." Like Accelerator, I think I think it's a web-based game, is one of those where I just was like, "That looks kind of fun. Let's try it out." And in that sense, I don't think that people are consciously marketing, but that is marketing. I mean, that's the viral aspect of it. And sitting here listening to you guys talking after reading this article and things, I would really think that could be, if somebody put time and effort into how do you market that, it would be absolutely 100% effective. Well, not 100% effective, but it would be much more effective than just, "Hey, I hope somebody who happens to have an audience demos my game."
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the question: is does marketing really, like, what makes it big is when something goes viral, and it seems as though even with videos, which is what obviously we're doing more than with games, is when a video goes viral, everyone sees it, 1 million views instantly. Gangnam Style had absolutely no marketing to the US, but it blew up. Did marketing have anything to do with that? None of us can read Korean. I mean, what do you guys think? Does the marketing help?
Actually, I can read Korean.
I can read Korean, but I can't do anything with it. Oh, Callan, like, what about with your game? How are you marketing your game right now, man?
Oh, I've been trying a lot of different things. I mean, like you were saying about the YouTube demos, we've reached out to a lot of YouTubers to try to get them to cover it. We reach out to blogs that review games. It's really just trying to build a grassroots, because we don't have the budget to anywhere like with super high visibility.
So I'm just going to interject really quick. You just said something pretty interesting that I think that a lot of people, maybe a lot of consumers, aren't aware of, and maybe they are, but you as a developer reaching out to sites to review your games and to like notice your games and to maybe do something with your games, that's a huge step for any developer, and that's a huge area of the industry that I really feel like isn't talked about on the large part.
I guess that may be true. I guess I'm just so deep in it. It's like, just so omnipresent. And it's interesting because indie developers, like, we're not working with someone bigger than us who does the marketing for us. So, I'm making the game and I'm trying to sell the game to someone. And really just like it all comes down to you and what you're able to do and say.
No,
I agree wholeheartedly.
If you guys had big names behind you, you wouldn't technically be indie anymore. Yeah,
yeah, true.
Well, that is an interesting question these days, is what is an indie? I mean, if you look at Cloudberry Kingdom, like games doing really well because it's got Ubisoft marketing it, but Pony still considers themselves indie, like they have a tiny studio. It's just a couple guys.
Well, I think the really interesting thing about that is I really feel that indie in the gaming market is like indie in the music market. Like indie does not mean, oh, some dude in his garage made this in music. Indie means, hey, it's a certain kind of sound that was associated with an indie movement. And I think it's the same thing with games now. Indie is a certain style that it's taken on a style of that usually lower end graphic or retro graphic, whatever you want to call it. And then they can say, oh, look, we're indie because we made an indie looking game. But like you said, Cloudberry Kingdom's being pushed by Ubisoft. How is that indie? Maybe it was a small project for Ubisoft, but I would not.
Well, it wasn't Ubisoft's project. They just picked it up.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
like it was a game made independently that then stopped being marketed independently.
Well, and that's very similar to the music scene. So, okay, White Stripes was an independent type thing until they sold their record and became giant, and then are they still indie? I mean, because that's hard to say. And you could, I mean, Cloudberry Kingdom isn't the White Stripes, but they were an indie group, who made a game and then got it pushed by a giant label, basically a giant video game company. So what is that still indie if you're being marketed by giant companies?
Well, maybe that's the line. I personally feel like once you've been picked up, by a giant company, you lose that indie title. Look, let me ask you this question, all of you guys: is Minecraft still indie?
I don't think so.
Notch is worth 150. I believe it's actually. Excuse me. I believe the figures are somewhere around $15 million currently. Is that
would you believe that I've never played Minecraft?
I would believe that. The game doesn't look that exciting.
It's true.
I've tried to play it.
I still don't think the game's very good. I think
Terraria. We're getting off the rails. We're getting off the rails. The question is indie games
a fad?
Yeah, this has now become the verdict on Minecraft podcast.
Well, here's the thing. Minecraft is a success. We can say that because they've made millions of dollars. Mojang is an established studio. They're doing well. What does it take to be successful for an indie game? Well, that's the question.
Here's an interesting.
Hold on. Go ahead, M.
All right, it's kind of interesting because it came out because a lot of people were small groups and wanted to actually put their own games, but of course don't get the big marketing and money backup. But they want to succeed, and just because they go big, it seems like indie just came about from the people who just wanted to make a good game and play for it, and then they got big. So like Minecraft was just a game, and indie came along saying, "Oh, there's a lot of people trying to feel the same. Where we're a small group of guys, we can do something, make a success out of it." And now we're looking at people having more means. Like Steam's a huge platform for indie games where you can just post any game, and hopefully someone picks up really well. But now that it's getting on so much, like more people are starting to realize maybe we can make a game, we can do more, and giving them more hope. Now that the platform is starting to shrink and there's not enough space, they need to branch out a little bit and actually start pushing their own weight.
So is making indie games about making games, or is it about making money? Are you guys trying to make a living doing this, or are you doing this for the love of the game?
You can't separate that. I mean, you just can't. If somebody is out there just making games for the love of making games, they're not going to charge for it. Otherwise you are tying the two together. There's just no way to get around it. Now you might be
on the other hand, some people do just make games and put them out for free just for the love of it, and I sort of feel like it's interesting because it makes other games now have to compete against products that the creator's not trying to make money off of.
Well, and a perfect example of that I think is really interesting is La Mulana. I mean, I think everyone here would agree, as long as you know what the game is, that the original La Mulana was an indie game. It was put out for free, the thing's huge, and it's an interesting game, if not obsessively frustrating. But like then they came out with the Xbox Live one where you know, the new one that's come out has got polished graphics. They kind of cleaned up some of the puzzles. Is that still indie? Because now they're selling it. You know, I bought it for $5 because I like the game.
Well, and that's keep going. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting case because there you had a game that was, I think everyone would argue, clearly indie. One of the first big breakout indie games of just somebody who like threw up their game on the net that I know of, at least. And now, you know, years later, you have them making a commercial product on the same exact game with just a couple updates. And
Well,
so how does that affect its indie status? Because I don't look at it as indie anymore. I don't look as the new one as indie. That's like, oh no, this is them making a product and being professionals, and yeah.
So the question is at what point do we go from making a free game to making a game that we can kind of live off of? At what point do games start becoming kind of commercialized as opposed to the camp of just making a game for fun? And there is definitely a blend between them. But I mean, what do you guys think? Are you guys are to our two game devs? Are you guys trying to get to a point where you can live off of your games?
Desperately.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if that is the case, do you guys eventually want to get to a point where you are no longer indie?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
So
Yeah,
based on what you guys have been saying, I sort of feel like maybe we need to look at it more like this, is like, under your definitions then, because I'm trying to make money, I might not even be as indie as someone, you know, who's making more money because they just tried to make a free game. But I like to think of indie not as sort of like the financial side of it and more like the creation side of it. Like, did a boardroom decide this is how the game's going to play, or did the creator create his own vision? I feel like that's a more organic kind of independence when making a game.
So then
Yeah, I
would
mean,
BioShock... Sorry, Em, go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, like indie became exactly what it is, independent video games, and regardless, it depends on how you want to play. Like with a lot of, it gives a lot more power to the developers versus like we're trying to tend to the crowd, or versus we're trying to create something new out of it and see what we can develop, and of course, make a living off of it. But it's just that the whole
Right,
world
to
of
me,
independent
so like
video games is
Will
starting to
Wright
grow
and like
much larger.
Peter
Wait,
Molyneux,
hold on.
they're sort of indie.
Keep going. Let M finish. Go ahead. Keep going, M.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, I want to actually what you say.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess go ahead. Take the floor, Colin.
All I was saying is that, like, in that sense, I feel like, you know, a lot of name developers are still sort of indie. Like, if you look at Peter Molyneux, he keeps making games that he likes to make, and no one really tells him to not make them that way.
For those of us who don't know who that is, what games does he make?
The Fable series, I think Black and White.
And it's very interesting
Some
that you.
others that I don't remember.
It's very interesting that you would consider Peter Molyneux's games indie. So what I was trying to do here, I'm trying to launch us onto point 2, is saying that obviously there is a market for indie games. People want to buy indie games. People want to play indie games. But in order for the system to work, indie game developers need to make money. Obviously, making a living off of it means that you can do it full time, which means that subjectively you get better at the art. So the idea, going back to this article again, is saying that indie game success is generally luck. It has nothing to do with marketing. That's point 1. But the games that do get popular are essentially held up pretty high. Like, we're all pretty familiar with The Binding of Isaac. We're all pretty familiar with Braid. These huge indie titles that made it big. The second point that this article is making is that essentially because there are a few, because a few have done well, it opens the door up for everyone. And essentially because everyone wants to start making games, instead of, let's say, you guys could be making, I don't know, protection software for security. The indie gaming market is now becoming heavily saturated. There are literally too many indie games for it to survive as a medium. One point that was mentioned in the article On October 9th, Steam accepted 100 titles for publishing on their Greenlight service. And he says again, 100 in one game, just
One
on
day.
Steam, in one day, just on Steam. What do you guys think? Is this sustainable at this rate?
It depends. If you're going to make it to make money, then you're going to have to put the effort to push and market out. But if you're making games to make the sake of games, I mean, that's the idea of an independent game, was not to also make money, but just to be able to have hope to say, hey, we're a bunch of just three guys in a basement. We can make a game. Let's do it. Now with the games becoming so popular, people are starting to have more belief, opening up their options to say, hey, let's put a game together. Like Slender, the first Slender game, where you just collect 8 pages and the crappy graphics, but it was so well executed that it got picked up by some of the bigger name companies that delivered Slender the Arrival now. That's a huge one. And it's just kind of cool how that people are just starting to come out of their shells and that the market is growing. But it's depending now between like if you're making more money, what are you trying to do, what your goals are aiming for, versus are you trying to create a new gameplay or see what happens. And it kind of goes back and forth. You never really know what happens until you do it.
But here's the thing. A good game like Slender is now on a list with 100 other games released the same day. Who is going to play through those hundreds of games and see it?
Well, here, I've got my Steam account up, and I'm looking across, the big highlighted stuff they put in that have like big visual ads. And if you go across the list, there's a Stanley Parable, and I might miss them because I don't know all of these indies. There's Risk of Rain. I don't know if you'd call Path of Exile indie. There's King Arthur's Gold, Space Engineers. And I mean, those are the ones that I can tell are indie, and those are going up. Those share the same ad space as Call of Duty Ghosts, Payday 2, Assassin's Creed. Big titles, giant titles. Those are sharing the same space. And I'll tell you, off those that I listed, I know that at some point I'm going to try Risk of Rain. I don't know that I'm willing to spend $10 on it, but I'll definitely wait for a Steam sale. It drops to $5. You can bet I'm going to pick that up. Now, I happen to know of Risk of Rain because I watched a video of it, but those right there, let's even say that 5 of those indie games from that 100-pack set that got put through on the Greenlight make it to this. Those will get bought. Those other 95 games, I'll never care. There's too many to see. Those just got thrown into a bargain bin, and someone will buy them, but not that many. I mean, probably enough that they'll make money off of it, which is why they're happy to be on Steam. But I think doing it that way was really a disservice to these indie developers. They could have just done it where they released 5 games a week and highlighted them on the front page. Would have been...
Yeah. Go ahead, Chico.
Yeah.
But just a quick point to make. I mean, now we're getting into it sounds like the conversation could almost become like, how do you find games that you play in the first place? I mean, there's a lot of AAA titles that some of my friends and maybe some of you guys, I could talk to you and be like, hey, have you played this game? And you would have had no idea that it existed. I would say, oh no, I haven't heard of that, but it was a AAA title. And think about the games. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to totally concur with what you're saying. Is that I think that the first question of the saturation of indie games itself, as a concept, as a market, as this large, huge, almost undefinable thing, is sort of we've slid into this discussion of Steam as a distribution platform, and really I think Vogel's article here, I mean honestly, it's almost a fault in his argument, because this guy, I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with his games. This was like a total just crazy moment for me when I got invited to do this, and I'm reading this article. I played Gene Forge when I was a kid, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it, this is crazy. But my point is that this guy's games are extremely, he's got an extremely niche audience, right? And that I know of, he's not distributing on Steam. He's got newer titles that are on, that are on the Android market and that are on iPhones and whatnot. But the point is, I mean, the question of distribution platforms, I think, is it's not irrelevant, but it's a, I guess it's sort of a subtopic. And the question of, are indie games viable? Is the market saturated? Are there too many indies and not enough, consumers of indie games? I mean, I think the answer to that is a resounding no. I mean, as long as people are creating something that someone wants, that person will buy it. He's found this niche market, and this guy's living the dream, right? I mean, he's been doing this for 20 years, making games that could not possibly do well on Steam because they don't appeal to a wide audience. Am I crazy?
I completely agree with you. And just on that note, it's like saying don't open another sandwich shop because they're, Subways are on every corner, or don't open another ice cream shop because Baskin Robbins has the market. Like I think that
Exactly.
if people are making good products, it's going to speak for itself. And if I don't know about certain AAA titles, of course I'm not going to know about every indie game that comes out, but a one that is awesome, and there are people out there playing. I mean, that's game reviewers. That's their job, like, to play video games and to review them and then to tell people about them. But it's also the job of the indie developer, which what I was talking about earlier, to make contact with those websites and market themselves, which is also what this article is all about.
Well, then let me ask you this, because obviously you guys are saying that as long as there are games, there will be people to play them. But what about the trend of the end user? I mean, free-to-play games are starting to become kind of expected. If you release an MMO and it's not free-to-play, people will wait for the game to get free-to-play. Now, that might be all well and good for a huge corporate company that's making a free-to-play game and that started off with capital, but for a small indie dev who is expected to maybe give their games away or might expect their games to be openly pirated, I mean, I have to ask, would you guys be okay with putting your game in a humble bundle where someone could theoretically pay you $1 for your game? I guess yeah.
Go ahead. From my perspective, the answer is, I mean, I'm not opposed to the idea of charging up front. No, you know what? I take it back. I am. I was about to say the opposite, but the truth is, I started all this knowing that I never wanted to charge anyone to play my games. And it has definitely been a struggle to figure out how to make money doing that. But, there are answers. And, there's plenty of them out there. The free-to-play model is completely viable. There are people making tons of money. And in fact, that's what I'm trying to do with, the sequel to, my first game. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm pretty much taking the same concept and I'm just trying to apply smarter business concepts to it. And, it's still a free-to-play game. I'm just, this might be this might change the direction of the conversation, but I'm using a microtransaction system, a virtual goods model for monetization, and in my opinion, this sort of it cuts through the problem because the game is still free, and if you do it right, you're not withholding anything from the player. You're not withholding fun from the player. You're still giving the game away, but you're also giving people who appreciate your game, people who love your game and want to enhance their experience, enhance their fun. You're giving them a way to do that and to reward you because they want to. That's just basic economics, right? You create something that has value, people will trade something else valuable for that thing if they think they're getting the better end of the deal. That's trade.
Okay, maybe we got off topic a little bit. I have to ask, Callan, you make mostly Xbox Live games, and a lot of people have been looking at the Xbox Live arcade marketplace, and there is a lot of stuff up there. Do you kind of feel like do you feel like you get exposure? Do you feel like there's too many Xbox Live games? Do you think your good content is seen?
Well, I mean, first you have to understand that we're not really on the arcade with indie games. We have our own little channel. So there's a lot of games that come out there, and they're competing for a relatively small audience, compared to the whole Xbox user base. And in that sense, I mean, it's very competitive, but and on the other hand, the 5 games you might be competing against when you first come out are like a fart simulator, something that incorrectly teaches you Italian words, and like somebody's first stick figure platformer. So there's a low bar to be at, but at the same time, you're still getting washed over with all these games, so you have to do that outreach, or a few people notice you and then you disappear.
Okay, well, to my useless gamers, is obviously there are a few quality games. Like, I don't think we're really Xbox Live gamers, but the thing is if you have a list of 100 games and only, let's say, maybe 10 are quality, and the rest are, like you said, fart simulators, and there actually are fart simulators on Xbox
More
Live.
than one.
There's like a whole market for fart simulators. I mean,
ooh, and jerk off massage apps.
That
would be a big hit in Xbox indie games.
I just heard about those massage apps.
Like, we will make your controller vibrate.
Don't
start.
back on topic. Getting back on topic. To my consumers, the useless gamers. Like, are you guys actually going to sit down and look through a list of 99 really terrible games to find the 10 that are good?
Yeah, actually, I personally would. Just because the idea is that we're gamers at heart. We're always looking for something fun, and the fact that we're pretty much ADHD, we jump through one to another, and if something really sticks, it spreads like viral. Pretty cool is that with the indie games, independent people are creating a lot of new games. Is that there's now a variety of genres. It's not like the FPS. It's that same repetitive format, or it's a free to play with people just going crazy, making these stupid like fart simulators and all these stuff. It at least changes the way we create like formula for games, and with also like Kickstarter and lots of ways to back it up, it's giving more people more freedom to actually pursue and then allow us gamers to kind of see what we like and see what doesn't work and what does work and like fun with it.
First of all, I'm just gonna, as an aside, defend the farming simulators. I've known
they don't need your defense. They're doing quite well for themselves.
Well, no, and I gotta say, I was shocked because I thought they were dumb. They were just horrible, stupid things. And then I met somebody who was playing one, and I was like, oh, some people actually have fun with this game. That's amazing. And so I just wanted to defend those. But I think to go to your question specifically too, Dice, is there are times, and I use Steam because I'm a PC gamer. There are times where I will go through the new releases and I will just scroll through all 100 on Steam, and I'll get to the 100th one, but that is giving each title, there's 10 on a screen, probably about 0.2 seconds to catch my eye. I'll scroll down the text and I'll be like, oh, okay. And then the next one. And that's that amount of time from okay and the next one is how much time I'm giving each title to look at it. So from that point of view, again, this actually comes down to marketing. If they don't market with an interesting title and an interesting picture that's communicating to me what they want to do, it's just not going to work well. On the LI, you got a dog barking.
Yeah, you can mute me or something. Like,
always professional.
You can click the little microphone.
Say, know how this thing works.
Yeah. The dog is trying to represent for the fart simulators. He thinks those are hilarious.
Okay. Yeah, but did we hear from Did we hear from Chico? Chico, what do you
No,
think about this, man?
It's a really interesting topic for me, just because I feel like, well, I should say, let me preface with this article that we're talking about in this conversation. He kind of says that the Humble Bundle is a bad thing, that it's this Costco-sized, bargain bin of indie games. Well, to that I say, there are a lot of games in the Humble Bundle I would have never known about if they weren't in the Humble Bundle. And I've never really been big into indie games, or like finding indie games to play, or scrolling through Steam and looking for, the next big thing. But the Humble Bundle actually opened my eyes to that. Like, I played some good games through that, and it made me want to go look for more and I don't know, research that and pursue that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I would agree with that. I would say the Humble Bundle, I think for indie people, especially one like Antichamber, does not need to be on a Humble Bundle. Minecraft does not need to be on a Humble Bundle. But, for the ones that are just like tiny and small and I've never heard of, it gets them a little bit. I mean, every little bit counts. If they get 25 cents for each pack, or, for each Humble Bundle that's sold, hey, that's not bad for them. Those games wouldn't have sold to anyone in the first place, and they actually get marketing. I mean, that's, I think, the number one thing is they get marketing for their games.
Exactly.
How many games did I see on a Humble Bundle only a month later to see it pop up on Steam?
Well, here's the thing, and here's the thing. Not every game can make it to a Humble Bundle. Right now, the Humble Bundle is they're doing Warner Brother games, and you have AAA titles on there, and so obviously people are going to go because, I mean, you've got Batman: Arkham Asylum Game of the Year edition, Fear 2, Fear 3, Lord of the Rings. But the thing is not every single indie developer can get on this, and it goes back to marketing. What about the games that can't contact the Humble Bundle and get that kind of promotion?
Well,
what are they supposed to do?
I'm actually really glad about that. If you guys, I don't know if you guys saw the first Humble Bundle. The first one that came out, I was like, I paid $1 for 5 games? Holy, I don't think they were even doing the beat the average at the time. And I gotta say, man, the games on the first one sucked. They were not good games. I mean, I know they were indie darlings, but they were...
Do you remember any of them?
The first one that... Maybe I can just find it online. I think the ones that I'm thinking of, and maybe this is just me being biased, but I think one of them was the Samarost games that are like just these weird point-and-click games that maybe they're fun to some people. I like point-and-click games, but this one I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And I think there was another one like called Lugaru or something that I played. Lugaru HD was one of them. They weren't bad games for when it started. Like, they were indie titles that had made a name for themselves. I'm not trying to detract from what they accomplished, but like you compare them to the indie games that come out now, and you're like, holy, those suck. They just suck.
Well,
so I'm glad, because the Humble Bundle shouldn't be pushing, and that's one of the things. And I heard this too about the Steam, the recent Steam push with the 100 games on Greenlight this time. Most of the games that have been greenlit have been games that deserved it in the past. This one, not so much. Like the list, when I looked through it briefly, a lot of them I was like, that game still sucks. Why are they pushing it? I mean, like, there are already so many games on Steam. Why are they putting more games out on Steam that suck? Like, I don't need more games that suck on Steam. I'm sorry, that was a long rant, so I'm gonna let somebody else talk.
And I just want to say, I'm sorry. World of Goo and Gish were in the first Humble Bundle, and those were
amazing.
Yes, those
awesome.
were good.
What
games.
Are you talking about, Sam? Those were great games.
But there were a few others that were not good. I agree.
Well, I want to hear what M has. M, go ahead.
All right, sorry. But going back to the original question, that would you go through 100? I mean, let's just think about it today. There's thousands of channels, and you can switch through it and go through it. And you know what? Only ever sticks is whatever we like. But the fact that there's so many more options and so many different tastes that there is someone out there. There will always be someone. And the fact that we're all grown men talking about games when, you know what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10-year-olds who would go through 100 because they're looking for something entertaining and would play each and single one because they have time and they don't, you know, have jobs and make a living. It's a great group for like independent. I mean, we're grown up. We're trying to make the best of our time by selecting which is the fancier name. But as a kid, you just pick up the first thing. And it's the most exciting experience, and that's why I say, you know, we're gonna go through all 100 games because we go through 1,000 channels till we find what we actually like personally, and then we stick to our niche. But there's always a niche for everybody out there.
Well, here's okay, and I'm going to use my rebuttal to that to launch us into part 3. So you guys, we're mostly, obviously, you know, the useless gamers. We like indie games. We have 2 indie game devs here, but we're not an accurate representation of the gaming community as a whole. Obviously, because we have no women here.
I am,
but
I am an accurate representation of the whole.
You, a white middle-aged man, yeah, you are, Sam.
I am not middle-aged.
Anyway.
Whoa, just because I'm probably the oldest person here does not make me middle-aged.
Anyway, but here's the argument. You guys would play these games, but you would play them, and as we've said, in a humble bundle where you can pay minimum $1 for them. You would buy them on Steam sales, on Greenlight. But the thing is, if there's a list of 100 games, and I didn't put this qualifier on there to see if anyone would pick up on them, there's 100 games, you have to pay, and I believe the average right now is somewhere around $5 to $10 for each. You would not pay $500 to play 100 games. So with that in mind,
I might throw 20 down. I might.
You might throw 20 down, but the thing is, there's still 100 games. So here's, and I'm using this to launch us into point 3 of this argument, is saying that because there are a few games, and we think we're indie gamers, we think we love indie games so much, and maybe we do, but the thing is we are not going to buy every single one. We're going to buy the good ones that are marketed to us well. Going back to point 1. So the argument is that because there's a list of 100 games, because we only have so much limited money, because there are 100, you know, there's so many games to go through, and we have limited money to go through, the indie gaming industry will inevitably decline. In this article, it essentially says it states this immutable fact, and this is agreeable, that whenever people start making a ton of money, they will attract competitors. And they'll keep attracting people, and they'll keep attracting people until nobody makes easy money anymore. It's the iron law of capitalism. The first person that came up with that made McDonald's successful was immediately followed by Burger King and whatever else. I can't think of any I can't believe I can't think of any other hamburger places.
Wendy's.
Wendy's. There you go.
Jack
Wendy's.
in the Box.
Shootouts. Jack in the Box.
But what about Five Guys?
White Castle.
Five Guys. White Castle. Immediately. So you see, burgers are not unique. Someone got in. Someone made it big. Everyone saw, hey, we can all make money off of this. And the same thing is true of indie games. Because you have your Braid, because you have your Binding of Isaac, is going to be a flood of people into it, which is why we have.
Not only is it going to be indie people flooding into it, you're going to see like Ubisoft is going to be buying up titles like Cloudberry Kingdom, and eventually they'll probably even spend dev teams on it, their own teams, to make these games that are like indie titles because they see the money.
But the argument is that because there are so many indie games, because everyone sees it's a quick, easy buck, you spend very little money, you get very high turnout from a success, it's going to be saturated, and it's going to inevitably fail. I'm going to ask our indie devs first. Let me start with Callan. He's been quiet for a little bit. Callan, do you think this is true?
To an extent, I mean, It's definitely true, but if you look at it like this, when video games first got big, all these big companies came in and made a bunch of money. Now today, we don't have as many big studios as we did in, say, the mid-90s. So a lot of them died off, and I think the same thing is now happening in the indie community, is everyone's trying to get in there. Some will survive and some won't.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. Just like any business, some will survive, some will fall by the wayside. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it just seems new to us now because indies were never really part of the conversation, say, 10 years ago.
That is true. You couldn't have an indie game break into a PlayStation market. I don't know, Rob, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that the point that Vogel tries to make, and the top what the question that's been raised here is a little bit semantic, because we're talking we in fact we started out with this question of like, what does it mean to be indie? What does the word indie even mean, right? And I don't think we really agreed on that, and we moved on because how can you? It's just a word, right? So I guess I have to come back to the idea that so much of what we've been talking about is extrapolating from Steam in particular. We've been talking a lot about Steam, and it sounds like you guys are, Steam is kind of maybe your go-to place for games, for indie games.
I don't even own a console, so.
And I think that there's been a lot of extrapolating, things that you can say that are true about Steam, and we're extrapolating this into the whole concept of indie games. And I think maybe this is a fault, because the truth is that there are people trying everything there is to be tried is being tried. And Steam is certainly in the limelight right now. It's certainly a focal point, it's a center of gravity for what is being called indie at the moment. But to take what's happening on Steam and to extrapolate from that the idea that indie games will ultimately decline and I don't know, die. I mean, I think that's I'm sorry, but I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's really extreme, because I mean, the fact we make games not to make money. I mean, if you guys made it for money, then you guys would be specifically designing your games like order created for the consumer. But
you would be the tablet market. Sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The tablet.
Finish M, and then Sam, you can go afterwards. Go ahead, keep going, M.
Yeah, like the tablet market. You just make these stupid games, but no, they make it for the fun of it, and it's never gonna stop. We play games because it's fun. We always look for the next one because it's an experience that you don't just experience in real life. It takes you to a whole nother world, and it's like saying the gaming industry would die because no one's gonna make money in the gaming industry, or the first guy who made some burgers was looking to make money, but then then no one would ever make burgers again. But there's always a reason besides making money.
The burger bubble's gotta pop, man. It's gotta pop.
Time to get in and out of the burger bubble.
Yeah.
I guess maybe an interesting question here is is Steam the arbiter of the definition of indie? Like,
okay,
if
but
you're
before
not
we
in the humble, sorry, go ahead.
Before we go there, I wanna hear what Sam has to say. Sam, what is your opinion of this?
Well, I do think, I mean, in the article he talks about there being a bubble for indie games, and I do think it's gonna pop at a level. It's not gonna be catastrophic. It's not gonna be like, oh, and indie games are now off the map for the next 10 years, like kind of like point and clicks were. I mean, point and clicks just disappeared for a long time. Another genre that disappeared was like space flight sim games where you fought. I just didn't see any major titles come out for years with that genre. But anyways, what I think's going to happen is there's going to get to a point where people are like, okay, indie games have gotten more and more popular, and then there's going to be a part where it starts to level off, and then people go, all right, there are enough indie games coming out that they're kind of like each other. Like, they're They're just, all right, that's another indie game. That's great. I already played Braid and that was good. And they're going to want to look for something different, and it's going to swing back more towards the big developers. People are going to want to see what they can do to push the envelope of the gaming, I don't know, the gaming sphere, I guess. Gaming verse. Because that's just how things go. You see it in music, you see it in movies. I mean, like, freaking dubstep, man. I mean, look at dubstep, and it's like
Dubstep and games
everywhere.
are totally related.
You know
Yeah,
what? I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I have to disagree on that. You know, we're talking about like large, esoteric trends in the way that, the world is changing, and the world is definitely changing. But I would say that, really with the advent of the internet, quite the opposite. If we're talking about really huge, sweeping trends in the behavior of human beings, the advent of the internet has had quite the opposite effect. It's had a decentralizing effect. I mean, that's what we're going through right now, right? I mean, that's why Steam even exists. And
okay.
Steam has.
Okay, well, no,
Sorry, go ahead.
hold on,
I
hold
know
on.
Chico
I
has a
wanna,
point.
Sam. Okay, I want to hear what Chico has to say. Go ahead, Chico.
I just wanted to say that, I really think that, and maybe this has been said in so many words, but and it has been. You guys did say that, indies are a new thing. Like that is still being defined. I mean, hell, we couldn't even really come to a definitive definition for what an indie game is, and the distribution system for indie games is still being defined. And that said, marketing for indie games is still being defined. So all that to say, I do agree that there's an indie bubble. Do I think that it's going to pop and indie games are going to go by the wayside? Absolutely not. I think it's all going to be redefined, though, for sure.
So we can we agree that indie games aren't going to stay the same as they are right now? Can we agree
Well,
with that?
I think we all agree that indie games are not going to disappear. They're not going to disappear. They're going to be a significant part of the market. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
What we're quibbling about is whether or not we're going to see it go up and up and up and up, and then slide back down for a while, which I think is kind of my point. Or are we going to see it plateau, like it's going to go up and up and up, and then it's just going to stay level, or what? I'm not sure if there's any other points out there on that.
Well, and here's the other thing: it's incredibly difficult to even measure these as well. For example, Xbox Live, they're very selective about what games they accept. So is Steam. Well, they're not. Here's the thing. They're not
Only
very
the
selective about the
fart
games.
simulators.
They're not
Live.
selective about the games that they select. But the thing is being on Xbox Live means that you're in front of an audience. Immediately, anyone on their Xbox who wants to look through, I wonder what indies are out. They're going to take their controller and look through, and they will get FaceTime. Anybody who's on Steam, yes, it's even in the article they say that they don't really give you exactly they don't Steam they excuse me Steam will give you a little bit of leeway because you have to be popular in order to make it through Steam Greenlight. So these give you some opening, but an indie dev that's just trying to push their PC RPG out in the middle of nowhere, who's going to see that? So these numbers are very hard to quantify.
Well,
so,
and I think so here's a part of what you're saying that I think I haven't communicated very well with the grand trends of things. And the way that I think would be a good way to show it off is actually genres of games. Right now we have so many freaking horror survival games. Like I almost had, we all have like a million horror survival games that we could choose from. Which kind of game do we want to play? Do we want to play Don't Starve? Do we want to play Left 4 Dead? Do we want to play Killing Floor? Do we want to play the No More Room Left in Hell, which just came out? Do we want to play DayZ? Do we want to play that crappy War Z ripoff of DayZ? I mean, what do we want to play?
I hear exactly what you're saying, but I would argue that the gatekeepers, like the New York Times is a gatekeeper of news, okay? Like they decide what is news. So they're a centralized, we go for news. And Steam as a gatekeeper of, indie games, I would argue that they're actually reinforcing that sort of repetition of yeah, we've played this game already, because that's what they have to do. That's what their business imperatives kind of compel them to do. They have to do what they know is going to work. And that's the thing about indie. I mean, if you ask me to define what indie means, it's the ability to innovate, to start, to say like, well, I'm not going to do what's been done before. And, maybe it'll work and maybe it won't, but where am I
But
going with
here's the
this?
thing. Here's the thing. At some point, we're going to stop seeing so many horror survival games. Might be 2 years from now, might be 5, and I might be wrong. But at some point, horror survival games are not going to be the number one thing on the block.
Look at World War II games. I mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly what
I
happened.
mean, genre circles have been around like that since gaming
Well,
started.
and I think the point that I'm trying to make is that indie is a genre. And like we had trouble defining indie, but at some level, you can look at a game and say that game looks indie.
Interesting.
And we all have a different definition of what looks indie, but somewhere out there there's kind of a general consensus, and eventually that market is going to get saturated, how we all feel right now about zombie survival horror games. Like that market is just flooded with a million titles, and eventually people are going to look for something else. They're going to say, I want, maybe the next thing's going to be steampunk sci-fi. I don't know. But maybe Dishonored is on the trend of the next big thing. But whatever it is, and I think indie's going to have that wave, and there's going to be a period of time like point and clicks just kind of disappeared for a while. I'm not saying that indie's going to disappear, but it's going to trend up, and we're in the uptrend of it, and it's going to trend down eventually. And I would say in maybe 2 years.
Okay, that's an interesting point actually. Because the thing, especially with indie games are very niche. Who was it? Mark of the Ninja designer Niels Anderson said essentially making something that is more specific and niche is really the strength of small independent games. So right now, clearly, survival horror became niche, and it's interesting because we have Let's Players and developers here, and I think honestly PewDiePie really did bring that. As much as we hate him, brought that to the forefront.
Thank you for adding that.
I have to do a PewDiePie. I'm gonna make it now a thing. I have to mention PewDiePie in every podcast. But here's the thing. So it's niche. Do you think indie games will survive because they can tailor to these niche audiences? Do you think that'll be the next reincarnation of the indie industry?
Well, that's
Silence.
actually
Yes.
I think that's a really good point, because that actually kind of blows my point out of the water in saying that indie isn't a genre. Indie is a movement, and the indie movement will go to whichever genre is out there in the spotlight. Right now, it's horror survival games. Maybe if we all of a sudden switch over to platformers, we're going to see 50 bazillion indie platformers again,
Yeah. And
that's a very interesting point.
what do our
sort of
developers think of this? Go ahead, Callan.
I was going to say something on that before, in that, like, I don't think indie is a genre. I think indie is sort of the place where new genres can flourish. And then, bigger names will come and copy what the indies make and do it with high production values, which I do think, because of the production values, there's going to be a swing back away from indies, but it's not going to be, like, earth-shattering or anything.
Okay, so should we start looking at indies as, instead of being a category of itself, just a niche market?
Sure.
I would say absolutely not. No.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Quite the opposite. I would say that as the distribution methods become less and less centralized, as the barriers between the developer and the player are reduced and I guess kind of splayed out in every direction. I would say just the opposite. I would say indie is the future, and and the centralized systems of distribution, the centralized sources of entertainment are those are the dinosaurs. Maybe you guys don't want to hear that, but
I don't
that's
think
my
that's
opinion.
true right now. If you
Why
look at
not?
Steam, they have like so much of the PC market. I think they have about 60% of the entire PC gaming market, this one gatekeeper. I think the thing that's good for indies is they're finally letting more people through the gates because they now know they can market that in a way to make themselves some money.
But what's cool about the green light system is that they're putting the green light in the consumer hands. They give like
Exactly.
a 15-second pitch for mini games, and I think it's only going to grow because now that we have
We're
okay.
losing M.
So we're losing M a little bit, and I don't mean to cut him off, but all right. So we've talked about this for a little bit in depth, and it's gotten to the point where we've had our say on it, and I kind of want to get your final thoughts. And I'll leave you with this quote, and I want to see if you guys can like this. It's a great article. It's on Jeff Vogel's blog spot. Again, it's called "Marketing, Dumb Luck, and the Popping of the Indie Bubble."
Hey, we should probably say his website too, since we're talking about it so much.
I'll link to it in the description. I'll put annotations and all of that good stuff. But he leaves us with this quote, and it's important because he leaves it in bold. For your final say, I want to get your opinion of this quote. I'll give you maybe 30 seconds or less. Just sum it up. Say if you agree with it or not. But he says this: if your game can't succeed based on word-of-mouth marketing, unless you get really lucky, you need to adjust your budget, your quality, or both. I'll go ahead and start with Rob. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that quote?
I agree completely with that quote, and it's interesting because it's actually kind of a non sequitur with everything that he's been saying up until that point. But this quote, taken out of context, is absolutely true. What it comes down to is: are you creating value? Are you creating something that people want in a way that they can get? In a way that keeps your business solvent. And he's breaking that down. Does it come down to quality? Does it come down to marketing? Does it come? What was the other the last? Anyway, the point is, if if you're failing, you need to examine why, and then make changes.
All right.
Does that suffice?
That's good. Callan, what's your thoughts on that, man?
I agree with the quote too, only I would stop at the first comma. If your game can't succeed based on word of mouth marketing, I mean, what have you created then? Why would someone not want to talk about it unless it's not fun or not of high quality?
Okay. Do you agree with the article as a whole?
I mean, he's saying that it's like a bubble. I think that's being too painting the indies with too broad of a brush. And I think there's a lot of different ways indies are reaching people that have never happened before. So we really have to just see what happens to it. But I think it's really just the games that succeed, the companies that go on, are going to be the ones that learn how to make something that stands out, that people want to talk about, that people want to get their friends to play.
Fair enough. Okay, now I'll look to my useless gamers. M, we'll start with you. Do you agree with that quote? If your game can't succeed based on word of mouth marketing, unless you get real lucky or adjust your budget, your quality, or both?
I only agree all the way up to the part where he says, based on word of mouth marketing. If you can't make something as good that will spread the news, that's the idea of viral. I mean, before YouTube, things got viral because people told one another and told one another, and so the newspaper was a big.
Okay, we're losing him a little bit.
I mean, good game. Oh no.
All right, that's good.
But yeah.
We got most of what you said, man. All right, Sam, what do you think about this quote, man?
Well, I think that I think the part that he's missing is really that you can just totally construct your marketing. I mean, Gangnam Style, for example, to go back to what you brought up, Gangnam Style was from the beginning, constructed thing to go viral. It wasn't just like, hey, we made this video for shits and giggles, and now it's amazing. Like, yeah, they got lucky and they hit it right, but they also designed the whole thing to be able to go viral. And I think that's what indie developers who are failing, if they have a good game, I don't think it's the good game necessarily that's going to do it. And the word of mouth, yes, but I think you can also have an average game and completely manage the marketing and also sell it well.
All right, fair enough. Chico, your final thoughts. What do you think about this, man?
I kind of agree with Sam here, and this quote could really be said about anything. I mean, you got to have quality for people to talk about it, and that's like baseline. And if people aren't talking about it, there's a reason people aren't talking about it. And just like Sam said, you could have something that's average, but it's marketed like crazy, and people are talking about it. So, and another point I wanted to make with this was that there are a lot of ways to get the knowledge of your game out there, and that's where I kind of like venture away from this article and agreeing with him. It really seems, and in this quote, it seems like, you know, luck is a huge factor in this. Yes, luck is a huge factor in anything, but there are so many ways in this market to get your game out there and to get people knowing about your game.
All right. So that's the end of it. We've been the Useless Gamers, and we've had these two great guests. So now I guess it's shameless plug time. We'll start with you, Rob. So what's going on with you right now, man?
Sure. I'm working on the sequel to the Applebee's Wall, which I plugged earlier. And as I mentioned, and I think it's prescient to this discussion actually, is, you know, I've taken the same concept. It's the same game concept. It's the same engine, you know, this defense game. And I asked myself, you know, why didn't I make money? You know, where did I go wrong? And how can I how can I build on what I already have and you know, make money? I'm sorry if that sounds mercenary, but you know, the truth is that, you know, that's what I got to do. There's, you know, it's anyway, the point is, so it's scheduled to be released sometime in the spring of 2014. I mean, I'm still in an alpha stage, so but anyway, I was actually kind of hoping to take this as an opportunity to, for the first time, release the name of the second game, which I have not yet done. It's not the Applebee's Wall 2, because I'm actually trying to depart from the image of the first game. The image of the first game was.
You might want to do that.
So, yeah. So the second game, drum roll please, is called War of the Shard. War of the Shard, and you can look for that sometime in the spring, depending on what kind of sponsorship deal I'm able to put together.
All right, guys, look for War of the Shard. It's going to be an online game, so definitely check that out. Callan, what about you, man?
Well, like I said at the beginning, we are running a Kickstarter right now for our game Super Dwarf Madness, and that campaign ends this coming Tuesday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern. So definitely try to check that out before it ends. Right now, we've got a long way to go, but even if we don't make it, we're going to try and get this game made one way or another, because we're really excited. It's got dwarves who have guns, and they kill zombies. So it's kind of like a lot of games out there, but we went with a different route to put in the dwarves, and they collect gold, and it's more about collecting in a sort of RPG experience, but it plays like a twin-stick zombie shooter. So it's just a lot of fun, alone or multiplayer. We really want to get it made.
All right, we're gonna have links to that in the description. I've played the build they have so far for it. It's an amazing game. Really like it. All right, so those were our special dev guests. Now we'll go down the line with our Let's Play regulars. I'm gonna start calling them Fries just because we came up with that name this afternoon. M, what are you up to, man? Are you releasing anything new on your channel?
Let's see, I'm looking actually to play a lot of scary games. I'm still continuing my Alan Wake, and just excited to see what else goes on out there.
All right. So Am's channel will be in the link in the description. Look for some scary videos on that. Sam, what are you playing so far, man?
All right. Well, hey, I'm Sam706. You can look me up on my YouTube channel. Should just be Sam706. And lately, I'm still playing Monaco. I've been playing 2 indie games that I'm going to be doing very soon in the future. One I'm working on is White Cane. I'm trying to do more of an edited thing with that. The other one is Heavy Bullets, and both of those, I believe you can just search for them, those names, and the game, like put game after it on Google, and you'll come up with them. Both of them are really fun, and that's the big thing that I'm doing.
All right. That's Sam706. And our last person, Chico. Chico, what have you been working on lately, man?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I got me a unique URL, which is youtube.com/Chico Gaming. So that's just got my new channel up, and I'm going to be playing a lot of Battlefield 4. I got one Battlefield 4 video up there, and I hope to be playing a lot more. But I do also want to start playing some indie games. So we'll see what I venture into.
This is the perfect podcast for you, man. All right. So, I'm Dice. I just want you guys to know also we're putting up a new website. We have Chico, and he's working really amazingly hard on it. And our website is going to be www.ugreviews.com. It looks amazing so far, but I know nothing about websites, so everything looks cool to me. But
And I want to second that. The website's great.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shucks. And it does not look amazing so far. It's pretty much a skeleton at this point, but it's coming along. We're gonna have some cool stuff on there. It's gonna be a great portal to get in contact with everything that we're doing around the internet. So yeah, I hope that I can get it done soon.
And we're going to try to have some information up on Callan and Rob's new games as they release some stuff as well. So if you guys have a chance, go ahead and check that out. But in the meantime, this podcast is over. We have been the Useless Games with our 2 amazing guests, Rob and Callan. And I just want to thank you guys for listening, and have a great week. Useless Gamers for life!